I'm Sharon Smith. I'm a speech and language therapist based in Inverness. I have a Highland-wide role. In early years, I'm going to talk about supporting your child's communication, mainly supporting their understanding and how we adjust our communication to support understanding. So we know that for children there's a whole range of neurodiversity. So children can have lots of different conditions, and you might have children who have just speech and language difficulties and difficulties with their communication and understanding that don't have a diagnosis at all, but you might have a child who has got a diagnosis but has speech and language and communication needs as part of that diagnosis, and difficulties with understanding as part of that. Now, difficulties with understanding come in a range of things. It's not simply a case of understanding and following an instruction. It could be a difficulty understanding different types of grammar, understanding intonation. It could be understanding and following a more complex instruction, but it's not a static thing. Your understanding doesn't just stay the same as and when on a particular day, or it can change from moment to moment, because it relies on things like your attention and listening, your ability to understand things depending on what's going on in the environment around you, but it also relies on things that's happening inside you as well, and what's going on for you inside your mind, and you can be distracted by what's happening for you at the moment. So it could be, are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Do you need the toilet? Have you suddenly remembered while you're sitting listening to me now that you had something happening this morning? Did you have a row with your partner before you came in to talk to me today? Did you have a difficult morning with your children and you're still kind of processing that information? Have you suddenly thought, damn, I needed to get those sausages out of the freezer this morning. Can I surreptitiously get my phone out and text my partner and say, do you have time to get pizzas out on the way home from work so that we can feed the children when we get home? So all of those things impact on actually our level of understanding and our ability to process language. So understanding isn't static, and there's lots of things that can impact on it. So we're going to have a think about some strategies that can help us with our understanding. So the first thing we're going to do is actually think about our understanding from our own understanding, but we're going to think about a little bit of a situation that we might find ourselves in. So we're going to think about a busy train station. Maybe we're in a really busy train station. There's lots of carriages, lots of trains, lots of platforms. We know that it's quite late in the day. There's only one last train back to Inverness, but we've got a little bit of time. So we're going to sit and wait, and we've got time to have a coffee. So we've got a coffee and we've got our book that we've been meaning to get through. So we're going to have a little bit of time. We're sitting reading the book that we've been meaning to get through. We're having our coffee in this busy train station, and then we hear the announcement that says the last train for Inverness is leaving on platform 5 in 2 minutes. What we probably don't do is just get straight up and head for platform 5. What we do is we check and we go and look for the departures board. We check on the departures board and see, is that right? Did we hear that correctly? Is that right? Then we head for platform 5. When we get to platform 5, we probably don't even just get on the train then. What we do is we look at the front of the train and see, is there a name on it? Does it say that it's heading to Inverness? Is it the correct train? If there isn't a name on it, we have a quick scan round. Is there a station master or a ticket collector? Can we ask them? Can we sense check that? Can we say to that ticket collector, is this the right train? Is it the train for Inverness? There might not be one, because in these days of cuts, there probably isn't one. So we get on the train and we have a look around the carriage, and we maybe look out for a friendly face, see is there somebody that we think we can connect to, and we say to that person, is this the train for Inverness? And they say, yeah, it is. And then we think, this is great, I've checked everything, this is the right train, and we sit down and we go on our train journey. So there's a lot of checking there. There's a lot of things that we do to check our own understanding before we kind of get on that train, and that's all well and good, and off we go. So we're going to think about some of those things that we do, and we're able to check our own understanding when that kind of stress level is a little bit raised, because we know that we have to do that thing, we have to follow that instruction, we need to do that because we needed to catch that train. We're going to think about it in terms of for children. So you'll see on the slide we've got those two kind of key messages, thinking about a quiet time to talk and being face to face. And that links in with that when we first heard that instruction. So the tannoy announcement said that last train for Inverness is leaving on platform 5 in 2 minutes. And we were able to tune into that. So we had our coffee and we were reading our book, and it was really busy, but we were able to tune out all of that and listen to that announcement. And we're able to do that as an adult, but there are still times sometimes where we can't tune out that information. It's really difficult. So think of those times where you're sitting in a cafe with your friends and you're listening to them talking, but actually you hear somebody at the next table say something that's got your name in it. It's really hard. You want to kind of tune in and think, what are they saying? Is it about me or is it about somebody else who's got a similar name? Or you're talking to your partner and your favourite song comes on the radio, and actually you want to kind of listen to the song rather than your partner. It's really hard to tune into what your partner's saying. So there's those times where actually it's hard to tune out background noise, even though we know how to do it and we've learned how to do it. For our children, and for lots of children, it's really hard for them to tune out background noise. It's really difficult. So we almost need to do it for them. We need to create that quiet time to talk so that when we give them instructions and we give them information and give them language, they know what it is that they're listening to. We create that quiet time to talk and make it that the language stands out. So some of those things that we cut out are really obvious things, like the TV, like the radio, like hearing mobile phones. That's really obvious noise in the background that we need to cut out. So we turn off the TV, we turn off the radio before we start talking to children. Some things are less obvious, and there's things like noises of air conditioning, sometimes lights buzzing. And I've even had children tell me, older children who are able to tell me that they can hear the noise of pencils writing on the paper. And actually we can think if you're in a class where everybody's writing on the paper, that's actually a really distracting sound if you've got like 25 people writing and you can hear all of that noise. But it's thinking about what are those background sounds and can we cut them out? And that helps our child to tune into language and tune in and listen to us. A really good example of that, about thinking about when that background noise is really important for us, is thinking about those times when you have the sat-nav on. Now, some modern cars, the sat-nav's on all the time and it's telling us instructions. And if you're driving around a city that you know, so say you're driving around Inverness and it's telling you where to go, you might have the radio on at the same time, and that's fine because you kind of know where you're going anyway. And you can listen to both. So the radio's telling you that, you can listen to the radio, plus you can listen to the sat-nav. But then suddenly when you go to a bigger city that you don't know, you might be driving in the Central Belt, you might be driving in Aberdeen, you suddenly get to that city and you need to know where to go. What you do is you turn the radio down. So you can really tune in to what you need to hear. And that's almost what we're doing. We're tuning out all of the other stuff so that we can hear. You need to be the sat-nav for your child so they can just hear that. And you need to tune down the other language. And the other thing we're saying about is being face-to-face. Now, some children don't like you to be directly face-to-face. What we mean by being face-to-face is being in their vision area. So you might be side to side or you might be round face-to-face. It's not about being directly in their face. It's about being there so that they can see you. They know that you're talking to them, that you're there and you're in their vision so that they can see where you are. You might need to really directly cue children to listen. So you might need to say their name. You might need to say, Sharon, I'm talking to you, almost kind of thing. So you might need to say Sharon and then pause and wait for me to kind of look up and then say what the instruction is. So really cueing children in to listen to you. Okay, moving on from that. Okay, so the next key message that we talk about is being careful with questions. So being careful with questions is thinking about the language that we use when we're talking to children. Sometimes when we think about that announcement that we heard in the railway station, it said the next train for Inverness, and it gave us really clear instructions. What we need to think about is if it said the next train for Inverness is on platform 5, the train for Aberdeen is on platform 6, the train for Edinburgh is on platform 3, we would have heard all of that information and it would have been really hard to work out what was the information that I need within all of that information. So we want to say keep it really simple. Reduce your language down and keep it really simple and think about what I need my child to hear. So if we say to a child, come on then, let's tidy up all of your toys, it's time to go upstairs and have a bath. That's a lot of language for a child to process and think about, and the real meaning might get lost. It might be that we say to them, playtime's finished, and we wait for that information to be heard and to be listened to. Or we say tidy up time, and we wait for that to do. And then we say bath time. So we keep it really simple and short, and we wait in between each bit. So we keep that language really simple, a bit like the train announcement. We just say what we need to know. The other thing about saying being careful with questions and thinking about the language that we use, children find questions really difficult to answer, and it kind of puts us under pressure. When we get asked a question, we have to think, what is the answer? What do I need to say? What's the right answer? And children can find it really difficult to answer questions and really difficult to know what the real answer is. So what we say is, if it's a new information, try to use a comment. So try to tell them the information rather than asking a question. So if we say to somebody, do you want to go outside? It's a really difficult question to answer when actually we want them to go outside. Or, are you going to put your coat on? They might just answer no, when actually we want them to put their coat on. It's much better to say, let's go, let's put your coat on. And if there is a choice, what we might want to do is actually just ask them the choice. So instead of saying, what do you want for snack? Let's just say, do you want a banana or crisps? And show them the two things. That way they can make a choice and they can see the two things that are on offer. Whereas if we say, what do you want for snack? It's such a big choice. It's really hard for children to choose what those two things are, or to choose from a whole range of things. So offering a choice is a really good way to do that. What we can do is absolutely show those things and show those two things. And we can do it with toys as well. So what do you want to play with is another thing, which is a huge thing to choose. And what we might do, I'm just going to nip over here, is we could choose two things. And we could say puzzle or beads. It makes it much easier for a child to make a choice rather than answer an open-ended question. Again, thinking about the language that we use, it's really important to tell your child what to do rather than what not to do. So a bit like if you think, I'm going to go on a diet, so I'm not going to let myself have any chocolate. The first thing you think about is chocolate. And you think about chocolate all the time. Or I'm going to be really good, I'm going to reduce my alcohol, so I'm not going to have any wine until Friday night. You think about that bottle of wine in the fridge all the time, and it bores its way into your mind. The same thing, if we use the language that we use, that's what children think about. So that's the image you hold. So if you have a child who's running and you don't want them to run, if I say don't run, the image you have in your head is running. So the word they hear is the word they see in their head. So if I have a child running and I don't want them to run, what I want them to do is to walk. So it's much better to say, let's walk, rather than don't run. So try to tell your child what you want them to do rather than what you don't want them to do. So walk rather than don't run. If you don't want them to be picking up that really expensive vase that might break, try saying to them, give it to me, and then distract them with something, rather than saying, don't pick it up, because they've got that image of picking it up. And don't is a really hard word to understand. It's a really complex instruction. Okay. The other thing about thinking about language is to use think about using really simple, clear language rather than non-ambiguous language. So sometimes if we say to an adult, oh, your coat's on the floor, and it's by a peg, you would all assume that that means pick it up and hang it on the peg. But actually a child might say, okay, yeah, my coat's on the floor. And they don't pick it up. And that's frustrating, because what we wanted them to do was to pick it up. Or your shoes are over there by the box. Yeah, they are, but we're not going to put them away. So let's make it really clear and say, hang your coat up, put your shoes in the box. Or it's really messy in here. Yeah, it is. I've had all my toys out. Make it really clear. Let's put your toys away in the box. So making it really clear and really simple. Okay. So moving on from that, we have a key message called use gestures meaningfully, but that also covers using things like visual supports. So when we think back to that train station analogy, we didn't go straight to the platform. What we did was we looked for the board to see, is that correct? Let's look at the departures board. Is it correct, the platform that they're telling me? When we went down to there, we looked to see, is there a name on the front of the train? Will that tell me where I'm going? We use visual supports all the time, every day, to navigate our way through life. Sometimes I think when we talk about visual supports, people think that it is just for children who've got difficulties with their communication, but actually we use them every day. So when we come into a new building and we want to go to the toilet, how do we know which toilet to go into? It's because it has a visual symbol on the door. When we turn on our phones and our tablets, the way we know how to do that is because it has visual symbols on it. It doesn't have all the words, it has a visual symbol. When we drive a car or we maybe pick up a hire car, the symbols, it's all symbolised as to where each of the gears are, it's symbolised as to how to do the lights. So everything in our life these days has got symbols. Turning on a cooker, using a microwave, there are symbols throughout everything in our life. So it's not just that. Symbols are really useful and we rely on them all the time. And they're really important and they help us to know how to navigate through life and make those decisions about where we need to be and what we need to do. So using visuals is really important and it's really key, and it helps us to build out, it helps us to understand what we're doing, and they're really important for children too. And so it's about making those visual supports really helpful for children so that they can understand them and use them. And I'm going to talk about a couple of ways that we can use visuals to support children. So one of the ways is a visual timeline, and you may have heard of those, but we're going to talk a little bit about them. So a visual timeline can be a little bit about a timetable about what's going to happen. So it should represent what's happening for that child in the day. So this might be a little bit about an end of the day routine for a child. So this one's got about having the pyjamas on, getting a little snack, and then brushing teeth and having a story. And it should only show the kind of main things that are happening for that child. And it should go kind of top to bottom. It should read that way. And this might be a routine that's happening at home. This could be maybe a wee routine that's happening in a nursery that you might use to support in a nursery. And we would recommend them being in kind of every nursery really for all children. Because let's think about, most people have a diary or they have a schedule on their mobile phone. And if I said to you, I'm going to take that diary or that schedule away, you'll take your mobile phone away so you don't know what's happening. Most people would be feeling quite nervous and anxious about this at this point, because they would be saying, I don't know what I'm going to do next. And it feels quite like it's quite anxiety ridden to feel like you don't know what's going to happen next in your life. And actually children can't read, so they don't have the benefit of a diary or a calendar to know that. So it's really nice for them to have this kind of visual representation about what's happening next. What we talk about with this is having, so it goes top to bottom. The idea is that you have the timetable of what's happening, the timeline. What you then do is you talk to the child when that activity has happened. So for this particular example, you'd say you've got your pyjamas on. Once that's happened, you say, right, your pyjamas are on. That activity's finished. You pop it in a finished box. Could be a finished box like this. This is literally just a washing tablet box. And that means that activity's done. The child can see it's finished. And then you can say, so next we're having snack. Now you can leave that here, or you can move it to the top so the child can see that that thing is definitely the thing that's happening now. So it can vary. And it helps children can see the process of time and the process of the routine that they're in. You can also have a routine that goes left to right, and that can be for a small type of like schedule, like things like washing hands or brushing teeth. So a schedule of an activity. The other type of visual that we have is called a first Venn board. And that can be used sometimes for children that are struggling to use, kind of have that whole routine of a whole kind of half a day. And for helping children to learn that things happen, that something will happen first and then we'll move on to something else. So you would use it by having just two things, and you would use it with children to say, this thing's happening first, and then you get to do this. And it can be useful for things where you might have something like, something that they're not so sure about. So you might have something like this. First we're going to do some toothbrushing, and then you get to go outside. So you might choose something that's a really favoured activity for the second thing, and something at the beginning that's less favoured. And it might be that you just do this really quickly. So it might be that we have tidy up and they actually only just put one brick in the box, and then you do this. But you can slowly build up for this first activity. And you would use really minimal language. So you would really focus on first toothbrushing, then garden, or then outside. So you would keep it really simple and make sure that they keep coming back to this and they can see it. And in the same way as the other one, when this is done, we can say that's finished, and then we're doing this. So they can see that they've moved on and that has gone, that's finished. Okay. We can also, when we were talking about making choices earlier, you can also have a choice board to help people make those visual choices. So sometimes it's very easy with a choice. When we were talking about the snack or the toys, we were saying those two things are very clearly there. Sometimes those choices aren't there. So once children understand that these pictures represent something, what we can do is have those choices represented here. And we can slowly build those up. So you might have a choice board saying we're going to make a choice. What do you want to do? Do you want to play with the cars and trains, or do you want to play with the sand? And that can help children to start building up making choices, because they can see what those choices are. Okay. What we talked about, what was really clear in that train example was that people go back and they repeat and they revisit things. So we did that. So you check things. So you might think you know, but what you do is you check. And that's really important, that we all check things out. So we repeat things and we revisit things. We go back and we checked with people. So we checked on the board, we checked on the train, we checked when we got to the train, is this definitely the right train? And that's really important. It's things that we do as an adult. So we don't confidently just go off and assume everything that will be okay, and that we've definitely, the first time we heard it, everything's okay, we know what we're doing, that's okay. The children that we have, then children don't have the language to say, is this a train for Inverness? Did I get that right? Is that okay? So we need to repeat and revisit that for them. We need to sometimes say it again. So sometimes we say something and the children haven't understood it. Remember when we repeat and revisit to keep it really simple. So we've kept it simple the first time, keep it simple again. There's a tendency, once we've said it once and the child hasn't done it, to think I need to use more language to try and get them to understand. But if they haven't understood it the first time, it's really important to keep it simple again and make sure that they've really, really understood it. To keep it really, really simple and to make sure that they have the opportunity to try and do it again. And if we keep it simple and keep repeating, and then show them, if possible, how they can do that by using the visual supports. And then also, so we've given that lots of repeating. The really important thing as well is to give them that time. So children need time to process language. So it's really important to give them lots of thinking time and enable them to slow it down and let them have time to process that language and time to really think about it and time to process and act on what you've asked them to do. If you want more information about kind of some of the key strategies that we talked about, so you'll have noticed they've got kind of the cartoon pictures on that we've talked about. There are some online trainings on just the Words Up approach. So there's a Words Up Early and there's a Words Up Primary, and they're available on the Emerging Literacy website. There's a link on there. And there's also Bumps to Ben's website, and there's a Facebook page for the allied health professionals.